Hi, thank you all for coming. My voice kind of sounds like this. I don't know why. I think I might be getting over a cold, but just ignore it. Okay. Who is the first person that you can think of when you hear of the word serial killer? For most people, they tend to think of Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, and the BTK. We all know about these men and the horrific crimes that they've committed, but do any of you guys know about a woman named Aileen Wuornos? Aileen Carol Wuornos was born February 24th, 1956, and she had a horrible childhood. Her mother was only 14 when Aileen was born, and then shortly after, her mother left her and her older brother with her grandparents. Her father was put into jail for child molesting and committed suicide in jail. Her grandmother was the only nice relative to her, and her grandfather was an abusive drunk. By 10 years old, she started life in prostitution, and by 14 years old, her grandmother died and her grandfather kicked her and her older brother out, which kind of led to her further being a prostitute. When Aileen was 30, she met a woman named Tyra Moore, who will eventually become Aileen's lover and the reason why she confesses to the murders. In December of 1989, a man named Richard Malroy was found dead several miles away from his car. His chest had multiple gunshot wounds. His belongings were stolen and the plate of his car was taken off. David Spears, Charlie Carson, Troy Brules, Charlie Dick Humphreys, and Walter Antonio were all found with multiple gunshot wounds all over their heads and torsos. In June of 1990, a man named Peter Sims was heading towards New Jersey. In July 4th of that same year, Peter's car was found and his body wasn't. And in Peter's case, witnesses came forward saying that they saw two women exiting his vehicle, and only one witness is able to provide a detailed description of the women. And these women later on were identified as Aileen and Tyra Moore. But besides the description, the police didn't have a whole lot of information to go off of. And it wasn't until December 21st of 1990 did they get their first solid lead. A pawn shop in Florida reported some items that were stolen, and it turns out that these items belonged to to Richard Malroy. And Florida at the time set a law saying that all pawn shops had to have fingerprints of the man, of the person who was selling them things. And with the fingerprints that they gathered from Richard Malroy's stuff, they're able to pinpoint Aileen Wuornos. On 16th of January 1991, Aileen admitted to murdering 7 men. Once she admitted to the killings, the trials began. She was charged with the murder of Richard Malroy, and because he was her first victim. In January 14th of 1992, the trial begins, and Aileen and her defense team planned on using self-defense as a reasoning behind the killings, since Aileen claims that all 7 men raped her. In January 27th, 1992, the jury came back having only spent 91 minutes in deliberation and found her guilty of all counts on first-degree murder and armed robbery. And if it wasn't bad enough, as the jury was leaving for the day, Aileen called out to them saying that I was raped and I hope that you get raped. The next day, that same jury came back and gave Aileen the death sentence for Richard Malroy. And Florida at that time, they did the electric chair as execution. Aileen then pleads no contest to the rest of the remaining charges, and she was given 5 more life sentences, bringing her up to 6. In 2002, though, Florida changed their ways of execution to lethal injections and gave Aileen a choice of the chair or injection. she chose the injections. As she was on death row, Aileen wrote letters to her friend Dawn, which eventually made into a book called Dear Dawn. This is just one of the pictures that Aileen drew while she was in prison and on death row. So yeah. And in one of her letters, Aileen writes to Dawn saying how she was able to make history by 3 things. She was the first female serial killer, she had the quickest trial, and she was the only person, man and female, that was able to get 6 death sentences in a row. When Aileen was asked if she had any last words, this is what she said. Yes, I would just like to say that I am sailing with the Rock and I'll be back. Like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th. Like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back, I'll be back. Aileen Wuornos died on October 9th of 2002. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you all for listening, and I appreciate it.